I promised you that I would get the slides covered from the last webinar via video because we didn't have a chance to finish up. And I thought understanding the three-pronged approach that underscores the connected learning community philosophy that we feel that districts and schools and organizations should really use in a 21st century professional learning model was important to your understanding of what you should get out of the course. So I promised you that I'd do a quick little video and so that you'll have it in your reference and can work your way through it. So if you remember when we were talking, we kind of left off, and I'm going to skip down a few slides, but we kind of left off when thinking about do-it-yourself professional development. And we had said that we live in an era of do-it-yourself kinds of PD or professional learning where we don't have to wait for other people to bring to us learning through in-services and conferences. While those are valuable and it's great for the synergy and the excitement of being with other people, that do-it-yourself professional development has really enabled us through Web 2.0 tools and the ability to connect and to collaborate with people around the world to learn anything we want to learn from a professional context about teaching and learning and our roles as educators anytime we want to learn it. We can find people, vet them, interact, and collaboratively create knowledge. So connected learners are really people that understand how to go out, find individuals who have deep understanding about different things that they need to learn, maybe something that aligns with the school improvement goals, maybe it's a personal growth goal that you have that's professional, but that you are able to bring what you learn and bring it back to the local context and really use what you learn from people around the world that you've connected with to inform what you're doing in your classroom, your school, your district. So it's a very purposeful kind of connection, and that's what connected educators are. Traditionally, we've had this kind of network, and the network basically was what we could refer to curriculum documents, colleagues, print resources, family members, and that as we went through our educational career, we would kind of lean to these people to have an understanding about when things weren't working or new ideas. But as time has gone on, we have seen that, and I'm looking to see if I have a different graphic here. I don't have it in here. We've seen that the connected learning really goes from about a three-pronged approach. Rather than just having the limited teacher network, we now have face-to-face learning communities where we can talk to each other within the face-to-face context of our buildings, personal or professional learning networks, and those are the network connections that we make in online spaces that are very almost selfish, very selfish in a good way, in that they're very much aligned with my personal needs or what I feel is important. And then communities of practice, and communities of practice being much like what you're experiencing inside this course, global groups of people that come together that have great questions or interests or queries about teaching and learning, and we kind of solve those problems together. And that it's through those kinds of collaborative connections, face-to-face, your personal learning and your collaborative learning, that we feel that you get the most powerful professional learning opportunities. So here they are again. Take a look. You've got local community, and that's that face-to-face connection. The team that's going through from Vermont, very purposeful face-to-face connections of a committed group. Others of you, I'm sure you have professional learning communities within your own building. Maybe it's between your department, your grade level, where you have conversations and you really talk about what's working on behalf of kids and what do we do when it's not. Global network, these are individually chosen. They're very much cherry-picked. It's very much about you and your learning goals. And then a bounded community. And this is where it goes really deeper than what you can get from the other two spaces. And that's where people push your thinking. It's hard. It's messy. It's very systemic. And that's what we're doing like in the course. So you can kind of see them laid out here. You've got professional learning communities, personal learning networks, and communities of practice. Take a look at the method. If you take method across, you can see that PLCs are often organized for teachers. And that's one of the things that we hear the most. Sorry about the typo I'm seeing for leveler instead of level. But that's probably the piece we hear the most, that criticism is that teachers are not really driving the learning here. They're not the one pushing it out. It's being done for them. But if you look at personal learning networks, it's do it yourself. You have to organize it. And so the biggest criticism here is, what if you're not self-directed? And then communities of practice, and that's where educators typically organize it for themselves. Someone may set up a structure like we have in the course, but that the people that are having the conversations are really driving the learning. And then if you look down at the very bottom, you can see the focus. Professional learning communities really focus on student achievement. What do we do when kids are not learning? What do we do when they are? Meeting AYP, those kinds of things. Personal learning networks really are all about you, building your own personal values so that when you come back to the face-to-face community, you have something of value to share. And then the communities of practice, really, because it's about collective intelligence, really being something that is more systemic and not just thinking about the nuts and bolts of teaching and learning like classroom management, curriculum, but really going a little bit deeper. There's some great research. There's lots of great research that actually aligns with this, but there's some work that I like to talk about quite a bit because I'm very fond of it, and I think it really helps you to see this in action. And it's Cochran, Smith, and Lytle's work, where they describe 3 ways of knowing and constructing knowledge. And the first way is knowledge for practice. And the knowledge for practice is kind of what you're doing right now. It's a sit and get, passive kind of experience. When you're learning something new, you often have to start at this level. The problem with just knowledge for practice, just taking courses, just reading books, just getting a degree, is that it's kind of tough to do follow through without support. When you go back to the classroom or you go back to the school, to be able to apply what you learned in the workshop or what you learned in the degree can really get lost in just the daily life that happens in a school and dealing with kids. So that takes us to knowledge construction in practice. And knowledge construction in practice is the learn by doing. So learn by listening for practice, learn by doing is knowledge in practice. And that's really where you try out the different strategies, whether you're an administrator or you're a tech coordinator, or if you're a teacher. And then it's really strengthened when teachers then reflect and share one another. So the advantage of a network would be that on Twitter, I might learn about a particular strategy or get a link or look at a resource, go back and try it out. When I come back on Twitter and talk about what worked and what didn't work and why, that's when this knowledge is really strengthened and it really becomes more meaningful and purposeful. Knowledge of practice is the one that's really missing, I think, and that has a lot to do with inquiry and collective wondering and collective intelligence building and not just operating cooperatively but collaboratively. And it's where a lot like what we're doing inside this course, and it's the one that's missing. It's also the one that's the hardest. And what powerful learning practice, we really believe that it's all 3 that are going to enhance professional growth. And you've got to have all 3 to lead to real change. So passive, active, and reflective knowledge building. Now, when I started to talk about these, it was very interesting. That's when Stephen came in and said, can we have this other conversation? I've got to say that I'm not a cheerleader for technology, and I'm not sure that we need to be, like hoorah, everything technology. And it's interesting because when you look at this 3-pronged approach, it really aligns itself nicely with Stephen's words of caution, because the 3-pronged approach says we need face-to-face interaction, real-time, substantial kinds of interactions with each other as educators. The building the knowledge in practice where you're in networks and you're gathering information, it's with the purpose of coming back to the real world high touch environment and trying things out. And then the knowledge of practice is where you're engaging deeply with other individuals, talking about very meaningful things. And technology is just the venue. It's just the means that we do it so that I can connect with people in Vermont that I might not have met otherwise. So I don't think anything that we're talking about when we talk about this three-pronged approach is saying, taking that amusement park approach to technology being the end-all answer to everything. So even if that's screaming loudly in your ear, but technology isn't and it's going to be the down, and oh, I want you to try to bring peace and really listen to what we're saying here. And I think you'll see that we're saying the same thing, that there needs to be balance, and that especially when we're talking about your professional learning, we're talking about that whatever you learn, you're leveraging the technology because it'll allow you to connect with people you don't get to talk to in great diversity, but you're bringing all of that back to your students or your interactions with each other. So network and community. If you look at it here, you can see that a network is very much about me. So you can see right here, you're at the center of that. And it's very much about you and the connections you make. Reciprocity, where you're giving out and they're sending in. But community is very much about the we. So networks, I pick and choose how much I'm going to interact and who I'm going to interact with, and it's very much the easy button. But a lot of times with networks, there's no follow through, there's no so what. So the community, I don't get to choose them. It's kind of like your family or the people you work with at your school, but it's very much about the we. If I'm not engaging in the course, then these people are going to suffer because it's all about none of us is as smart as all of us together, and we need each other's ideas. So let's go a little bit deeper. What do we mean by a community? What is a community? Well, a virtual community is very much like a physical one. A virtual community is where the technology just supports the same kinds of things that happen in a face-to-face community. It's where relationships are built, people are interacting around things that interest them, just like you do in a physical community of people that live nearby, or a school community. So a community is a place to build trust and relationships. So it's not about the technology. It's about the trust and the relationships. It's about engaging with each other and getting to know each other, knowing what you're going through, and weighing in and being there for each other. That's what a community is. It's also very much about a domain of interest. Like, is there something like gardening or teaching and learning that we're all interested in, and that we are willing to build protocols and ground rules and have conversations around, and so it's a domain of interest. It's something that we're all interested in building community around. It's also a place to meet. Community, some people call what we're doing in the web very similar to the movement where in Europe where everybody met at the pubs, the whole family went, and that was a family gathering place. So communities meet in certain places, and the PLP Community Hub is serving as a place for you to meet as you get to know each other and build trust in your virtual learning community. Communities are also a place to construct knowledge collaboratively. And Stephen, I hope you like this picture. This is a very great example because this is a group of people who aren't fond of technology, and they are collaboratively constructing something. And I think the real power of it is that whether we're using the technology or not, to come together and to build or construct collaboratively, the important thing is it is about the relationships, it's about the trust, and it's about what we're building. And if you could just begin to see that using the technology is no different than using a phone, it just allows us to be able to connect easily and seamlessly with people that we wouldn't have met otherwise. Building community is also very much about celebration. It's your building community as we're building community. We want to celebrate little things, big things. We want to celebrate with each other our accomplishments. We want to celebrate each other birth, weddings, but we also want to celebrate professional learning goals being realized. So it's about recognizing each other and celebrating each other and really focusing on the strengths and building from there. So when you think about a community of practice, it's a network of individuals with common problems or interests. We could build a network around something we're trying to overcome, or maybe a problem that we shared, like Holocaust community, Holocaust survivor community, who get together and explore ways of working to identify common solutions and share good practice and ideas. So you can see here as you go through the bullets, this is what online communities are about, and they're very much aligned with face-to-face communities, just using the technology to be able to connect a little bit easier. You do have different stages in your community membership. So you might have a community membership where when certain topics are being talked about, you're very active and there's leaders and facilitators. And then you might have people that are on the periphery or that come in just when there's something that they can get. Or maybe people just lurking who are learning and applying, but you never even know they're there, but they're definitely gaining. So you can see that there's all kinds of members of an active community, and there's all different roles in the community. I love this work by John Seely Brown, where he talks about that when you're building an online community, you'll have people in the very center that are leading, and then you'll have people gathered around that person that are learning. You get the research that we found with Powerful Learning Practice is that the more time you spend in the community engaging, the higher you rate the sense of community that you feel, and the higher you rate what you got out of it. So in online communities, it truly is time spent equals return on investment. And so you have people that are around the person who's leading. But you'll notice there's also people then around the people that are conversational and really, you can see the action, that are lurking. And lurking is a legitimate periphery role in communities. Just because you're lurking doesn't mean you're not learning. However, at some point, you have to quit lurking and give back to the community, because networks you can lurk and you can take in because it's all about you. But in a community, we're making a commitment to each other, and it's a reciprocity kind of relationship. So lurking is acceptable up to a point, and then people are going to need you to share what you know and be transparent about what you're learning so that they can grow and benefit from you. And then there are people on the very periphery of the community that are just basically linking. They're harvesting links, they're harvesting things that they're want to benefit from. The secret is that the people who are leading the community, so when you start building your online spaces, you want to burn the fire so bright in the center of the community, in the center of that yellow and that red, that you pull people in. So often, because it's a collaboratively led space, as you notice, I started out leading. Now it's kind of me and the coaches are leading. Pretty soon it'll be me, the coaches, and y'all that are leading. You build communities for evolving. As we talk about different topics, certain people will move out of the learning space to the linking or the lurking, and the people that were out there will move in. So it's this almost like this breathing dynamic kind of thing, ebb and flow as people are learning. You can see here that there are different kinds of communities, and they have different drivers and structure and roles and rewards for being a part of them. So you have helping communities, which have a sense of belonging, people that are really drawn to that because they want to be part of that. You have best practice, which is kind of what ours is, and it's like a desire for improvement. You have knowledge stewarding communities where you're just trying to manage the knowledge within an organization, and innovation communities where we're really trying to push the envelope in terms of innovation. Our year-long Powerful Learning Practice is an innovation community, where I think our communities that we build in the courses are really more best practice kinds of communities. You can see the attributes of a healthy community here. And so these are the things that you're wanting to see in the people that you're in community with. And when you see this, you know that you've got health to the community, that people feel a sense of ownership, that they're willing to share honest opinions, that they have a clear purpose, that we can become self-managing and self-governing. You don't constantly have to be led. Health communities are not only collaborative, but they're built with evolution in mind. So you can see in the beginning, it's sort of like we have a community organizer and impose norms, and we're saying this is the way we're going to do things, and you're kind of passive. But now, as you're moving out, as we're going into, the later weeks here, you can see that you leaders are emerging and that there are shared values and norms and that you're becoming a co-creator in some of the content that we're learning from. People are starting to post. And then what we want to move to, hopefully by the end of the 12 weeks, is where it's member owned. I'm just a part of the community, so are the coaches, and that we, as learners, are collaboratively creating the knowledge, that it's self-regulated and it's not something that's being done to you, but it's something we're creating collaboratively. Communities do have a life cycle, and as people are going through the community life cycle, they're also going usually through the change pieces down at the bottom, so that in the beginning you form and everybody's like, yeah, okay, let's do this. This is kind of cool. Then school starts and everybody kind of starts storming and you start thinking, wait, am I really all about this? And do I agree with what's going on here? And who's got time for this? And then as we get a little bit further, we realize, we want to start applying some of this, and maybe we want to do an action research project. So you start norming and you start thinking, we better get this done because we're going to be presenting our action research to a global audience. And by the time you finish up work in the community, you have grown to the place and own the learning that you're just performing. It's just business as usual, and it's not some unusual thing. There are lots of different pitfalls and challenges when you're creating an online community that you have to think about. And if any of you are interested in doing that, I recommend that you come back to this recording and you just kind of stop on the slide and maybe read through them. If you'd like to start some conversations around these pitfalls or challenges inside our course space, I'd be happy to engage with you there. Or if you're interested in actually starting something on a district level, or for maybe an organization that you're part of, let you and I make an appointment and have a conversation around some of these. So when you think in terms of an action e-learning model, you can see here that traditional teaching being on one end and contemporary teaching being on the other, that there really is a kind of schema that goes with it. So you plan professional learning, and then you activate the learning community. So I've planned what I was going to do with you in this course. I brought you into the community of practice. I engage you in knowledge and skill development by in helping you to be self-directed kinds of learners. Then there's action and context and embedded in the practice. We encourage you to go back and try some of these things. We give you the curriculum adventures. We start to do the action research. Then we come back and we reflect with the learning community, where you really start to think about what worked, what didn't work, what you're trying, what's going on. We do that both asynchronously and synchronously. And then we start the process, all over again. And so you're building on the previous learning. It is ongoing. It's pretty exciting kinds of learning. And then once you've come through all that, at the end of the 12 weeks, for instance, you'll have evidence of new learning, and you can align it to whatever theory you go with, but then you're able to build on that. Yeah. So what's a network? A network is a little bit different than a community. We've been talking about communities. Networks are spaces where you connect with others who share your passion, but you're learning as much from individuals as you are learning objects. A network could be made up of a Flickr feed, a Twitter feed, individuals that you're learning from, YouTube videos. So in a community, it's all about people and what they share. And networks, it can be about things or people. And networks are very much about yourself. Now, there is a new theory of learning called connectivism, and connectivism is about the learning that takes place in the connections themselves, and that it really is this idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its individual parts. So connectivism involves creating connections and then developing a network, and then through that network, having your learning take place there. I'll give you an example. I used to first I started out when I was blogging, I had a very well-developed blog list, and I would go through it on a regular basis, and whoever you clicked on my blog list, who had these other bloggers, that was my network. Those are the people I read, those are the people I learned from. Then I used an RSS reader. I started using like Google Reader, which was the reader of the time, and I would put all the people that I was interested in reading there, and it would suck in all their content, and then I could tell who I was reading, and I kept up with it. And so really pretty much my network network was the people that I was reading. Once Twitter was birthed and you started being able to connect with so many different people, I started making my network more serendipitous in that whoever put out a link that day, or I never knew what my reading before I knew who I was reading and who I was learning from. I knew who my tutors were. Well, the way that connectivism evolved for me is that I started reading very serendipitously whoever came across my Twitter feed. And so then it wasn't like I knew who I was learning from. Each day, sometimes there were things of great value. It was very important that I vet my Twitter network and not just follow anyone and everyone. But it came out to be something that was even more valuable. So that's kind of connectivism and the messy glory of it. So here is a chart that might help you as you're thinking about connectivism as an educational learning theory, and that how it aligns up with behaviorism and cognitivism and constructivism. But you can see here that it really is a different type of learning, but it almost builds on social learning theory and some of the other things that we know. And I think you're going to be hearing more and more about this, connectivism as a learning theory. The third prong, we've talked about community, we've talked about networks, was We've talked about community, now we're talking about networks, and especially this idea of personal learning networks. And this graphic just kind of drives home that it's not just about people, it's also very much about tools and artifacts and things of that nature. I also think it's important for us to know that when we're talking about professional learning networks, that they're about self-directed kinds of learning. So it's about you deciding who you're going to follow and when you're going to learn and how you're going to click in, and realizing that it is all of these connections together that make this powerful, not just one. So not just Twitter, not just this course, not just something like that, but that it really is about the differences. So that you end up seeing you've got community of practice, you've got project teams, which is a team that's going through this, project teams or professional learning communities, the individuals you're connected with back in the local context, and then networks. And you can see that there are different purposes for each one of these. And you can stop the video here if you want to study this chart just a little bit. The third prong is professional learning communities. And I love it. You know, I'm a fan, big, huge fan, which is why I feel professional learning communities, the face-to-face exploration, needs to be very much a part of a three-pronged approach of professional learning. And I think that PLCs really are the best hope we have for reculturing schools. The problem is that I think that's in the 20th century. I think that PLCs as a standalone professional learning initiative are not enough. But I think when you mix them in the rich context of saying, I'm going to go out and I'm going to learn on the network and I'm going to learn in online communities and I'm going to harvest what I learn very purposefully and I bring it back to the local context, that's when professional learning communities driven by teachers, not organized for them, really have the most to offer. I love the work that Stephen Barkley has put together here, where he really talks about these three big ideas when you're thinking about professional learning communities. And I think it's worth you stopping here and reading these and pondering on them just a little bit. I also think it's important that professional learning teams think about what the aspects of their interaction should be. Like, for instance, what is your focus? You know, in terms of collaboration, in terms of reflection, in terms of your adaptability. And I think that if teams will really think about this four-quadrant approach to the way that they solve problems and the way that they synthesize information, then it can be a very powerful, positive force in school change. So it's a three-pronged approach. It's communities of practice, online and global. It's face-to-face interactions within teams or face-to-face interactions within grade levels or departments. And then it's personal learning networks. And it's the three of these together that really create the do-it-yourself professional development model that we've been talking about. So I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you found value. Thank you for taking the extra time to listen to the video, to be able to have the content. And what I hope you'll do now is go into the community, go into our course space, and start a discussion about something that jumped out at you here, something that either resonated with you or you want to push back on, something that caused you to think a little deeper and gave you a reason to pause. And we'll learn from you, and we'll engage with you, and we'll make that discussion thread that you develop a very messy, collegial kind of experience. Thanks for being with me today.